All right, folks, if you're like me and another 80 or 90 million people or so who tuned into the presidential debates last night, you probably found it to be just about as mind-numbing and uneventful as it could have been. And today I'm going to break it down for you as I see it and how many other free thinkers are seeing this as well. Now, first of all, we are dealing with a douche and a turd sandwich here. I mean, this is your options, as is the case every 4 years in America. And it's my opinion that the douche is the lesser of evils. But that being said, he still is a giant douche. And just like how Ronald Reagan once campaigned on bringing back the gold standard, Trump is saying things that sound borderline sane. He is a salesman, after all, and he's been pacing himself to make it to the very top. And this ridiculous, over-the-top Trump that we're getting from the Republican leadership campaign was a part of the strategy. He didn't say anything that Republicans hadn't said before. He just said it in a no-nonsense, politically incorrect sort of way. Like, instead of talking about building a fence to keep undocumented workers from Mexico out of America, he went ahead and replaced the word fence with wall, and he used the now politically incorrect term illegal immigrants. And now that Trump is the leader of the Republican Party, and one of the only two presidential candidates that has the possibility of winning, his rhetoric has now toned down. He's no longer appealing to the Republican base in order to get the nomination, but now he's appealing to the middle-class Americans who do not trust or like Hillary, but they still consider Trump the greater evil. Scott Adams, he's the creator of the comic Dilbert, recently wrote a piece here explaining his switch from supporting Clinton to supporting Trump. And he highlighted one of the major strategies of Trump's campaign. He called it pacing and leading, where he writes that Trump paces the public, meaning he matches them in their emotional state and then some. He does that with extreme responses on immigration, fighting ISIS, stop and frisk, etc. And once Trump has established himself as the biggest badass on the topic, he's free to lead, which we see him do by softening his deportation stance and limiting stop and frisk comment to Chicago and reversing his first answer on penalties for abortion, and so on. And if you are not trained in persuasion, Trump looks scary. If you understand pacing and leading, you might see him as the safest candidate who has ever gotten this close to the presidency. Well, I don't know about the safest candidate, but like I mentioned before, he is the lesser of evils. But of course, a lesser evil is still an evil. Now, the second highlight of this debate that I want to bring to your attention is the fact that Trump was mentioning the Federal Reserve. And you can be sure that if it were Hillary versus Romney, or Hillary versus Jeb Bush, or some other establishment Republican, there would have been little, if any, mention of the Fed or low interest rates that are contributing to a financial bubble. But last night, Trump got right into it. He talked about the bubble that the Fed created and how they are more political than Hillary Clinton, and how a deep economic depression is on the horizon. And he kept reiterating the $20 trillion debt, which I actually believe is larger if you include all of the unfunded liabilities. Now, Trump also talked about demolishing thousands of regulations and cutting taxes all across the board. And Hillary basically said that cutting taxes doesn't work and that the federal state must bring forth this new central plan to create jobs. You know, watching this, I feel like as if it were the Soviet Union or something. I mean, when did government bureaucrats replace a free market of entrepreneurs? Trump didn't criticize the idea of state planning, he just offered his own. He's a statist, after all, and he wants to continue the militarization of the domestic police and Besides, there's no guarantee that he's actually going to cut taxes and gut regulations. As mentioned before, Reagan once campaigned on a populist platform only to serve the corporate elite once he was in power. It's still a two-party left-right paradigm, folks. Trump does not challenge the status quo, he just challenges the Clinton establishment. And the deep state is still going to be in charge no matter who wins. And lastly, the third highlight of this debate that I want to bring to your attention is the fact that after Trump had started talking about the Fed and interest rates, the moderator, NBC's Lester Holt, who was clearly biased towards Hillary, he changed the topic to being about Obama's birthplace, or that he called Rosie O'Donnell fat. For the first half of the night, Clinton had been on the defensive, but now, thanks to Holt, Trump was defending himself against Clinton, who was using terms like racist and sexist to describe Trump's personal views. And the crazy part about all of that is that Trump is not a racist. That's just a big lie. But you say it enough times, and eventually, in the minds of the masses, it becomes true. Last night's debate was an exercise in futility. And while Trump may look like the lesser evil here, there's no guarantee that he's not going to be just as bad as Hillary when he takes power. He may talk about ending NAFTA, and he may criticize the Fed. But this just goes to show you just how effective we the people have been in broadening the range of allowable opinion. And Trump is a reaction to that, not the leader of some freedom and prosperity movement. The best course of action to take here, guys, is global non-compliance. It's a reversal to accepting this authority of Washington, D.C. And instead of focusing on two wings of the same bird of prey, Americans and Canadians alike ought to focus on separation movements and a decentralization of power. Anything less is really just more of the same. And we're going to continue our coverage of the 2016 presidential selection, so be sure to subscribe to us here on YouTube, and of course, we can't do this work without your support, so please check the links in the description to find out how you can donate to Press for Truth, or to find out how you can become a PFT member, or you can sign up as a PFT patron. Even just $5 a month goes a long way. And to anyone who has made a contribution, thank you so much for your continued support. So stay tuned, guys. We've got more video reports coming soon. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth.